Have you ever looked around your neighborhood and noticed people who walk every single day, yet somehow their belly never seems to get smaller? Maybe you're one of them. You faithfully reach your daily step goal, your fitness watch congratulates you every evening, and you honestly believe you're doing everything right. But weeks pass, then months, and that stubborn belly fat barely changes. It's frustrating because walking is supposed to be one of the healthiest forms of exercise. Doctors recommend it. Fitness experts recommend it. Scientific studies repeatedly show that regular walking improves health. So why do so many people walk consistently without seeing meaningful changes around their waist? The answer usually isn't that they're lazy. It isn't that their metabolism is broken. And it certainly isn't that walking doesn't work. More often than not, they're making one hidden mistake that quietly prevents their body from receiving the metabolic signal needed to reduce stubborn belly fat. Most people assume that every step burns belly fat equally. They believe that as long as they're moving, their body must be steadily shrinking visceral fat. After all, walking burns calories, and burning calories should automatically mean burning fat. It sounds perfectly logical, but your body is much more intelligent than a simple calorie calculator. Your metabolism doesn't respond only to movement. It responds to the quality of that movement. It constantly evaluates how long you've been active, how much oxygen your muscles need, how strongly your muscles are contracting, whether insulin is high or low, how much glucose is being used, and whether this activity is significant enough to justify changing your long-term metabolic strategy. Imagine two people both walking 1,000 steps. One casually strolls for 10 minutes, while constantly looking at a phone, stopping at traffic lights, slowing down to answer messages, and barely raising their heart rate. The other walks continuously for 35 minutes at a comfortable but purposeful pace, breathing slightly harder while keeping their muscles active the entire time. On paper, both people walked, but inside their bodies, completely different biological events took place. One body received only a weak signal that daily movement had occurred. The other received a strong metabolic message telling muscles to absorb glucose, insulin to decrease, mitochondria to produce more energy, blood vessels to improve circulation, and fat cells to begin contributing more fuel over time. That difference is the hidden mistake. The biggest walking mistake is not poor posture, the wrong shoes, or even walking too slowly by itself. The biggest mistake is walking too casually, too briefly, and too inconsistently to create the metabolic conditions your body needs before stubborn belly fat begins responding. To understand why this simple mistake matters so much, we first need to look beneath the skin and discover why belly fat behaves so differently from other types of body fat. Belly fat is frustrating because it is not just one simple layer of stored energy. When most people look at their stomach, they see the outside shape of the body and assume all belly fat is the same. But biologically, abdominal fat can be divided into two important categories. The first is subcutaneous fat, which sits directly under the skin. This is the softer fat you can pinch with your fingers. The second is visceral fat, which sits much deeper inside the abdomen, surrounding organs such as the liver, intestines, pancreas, and kidneys. Visceral fat is especially important because it is not passive. It behaves like an active endocrine organ. It releases fatty acids, inflammatory signals, and hormones that can influence blood sugar, insulin resistance, triglycerides, fatty liver, and overall metabolic health. This is one reason two people can weigh the same, but one may have a much higher metabolic risk if more fat is stored deep inside the abdomen. This is where walking becomes powerful, but only when it sends the right signal. When you walk with purpose, your large leg muscles begin contracting repeatedly. These muscles are some of the biggest glucose consumers in the body. Every step requires energy, and every contraction tells the body to move fuel from the bloodstream into the working muscle cells. One of the most important changes involves GLUT4 transporters. These tiny transporters move toward the surface of muscle cells during contraction, allowing glucose to enter the muscles with less dependence on insulin. In simple terms, walking helps your muscles absorb sugar from the blood more efficiently. As glucose moves into the muscles, blood sugar becomes more stable. When blood sugar is better controlled, the pancreas does not need to release as much insulin. This matters because insulin is not only a blood sugar hormone, it is also a storage hormone. When insulin stays high, Fat cells are more likely to hold on to stored energy. When insulin gradually decreases, fat cells become more willing to release fatty acids into the bloodstream, where they can be used for energy. But releasing fat is only one half of the story. Your body also needs to burn that fat. That job belongs largely to mitochondria, the tiny energy factories inside your cells. Mitochondria use oxygen to convert fatty acids into ATP, the energy currency that powers movement. A purposeful, moderate walk creates the right balance: enough muscle demand to require energy, enough oxygen delivery to support fat oxidation, and enough duration for the body to shift away from relying mostly on quick glucose. This is why a casual walk may not be enough for stubborn belly fat. If the pace is extremely slow, energy demand stays low, heart rate barely rises, breathing barely changes. Muscles do not pull large amounts of glucose from the bloodstream. Oxygen demand remains minimal, and the overall signal to improve mitochondrial fat burning remains weak. The walk is still healthier than sitting, but it may not be strong enough to force meaningful metabolic adaptation. Duration matters just as much. During the first several minutes of walking, the body is mostly warming up and using easier fuel sources like blood glucose and stored glycogen. Fat oxidation gradually becomes more meaningful as the walk continues. Oxygen delivery improves, and hormones begin shifting. If someone stops after only 5 or 10 minutes, they may quit, just as the body is preparing to enter a more effective aerobic state. Consistency is the third key. Belly fat does not respond dramatically to one perfect walk. It responds to repeated metabolic signals. With regular purposeful walking, mitochondria become more efficient, muscles become more insulin sensitive, blood vessels improve circulation, the liver handles glucose better. Visceral fat becomes easier to access over time. But if walking happens only once or twice a week, or only when motivation is high, the body does not receive enough repeated practice to remodel its metabolism. This is the core science. Belly fat does not respond to movement alone. It responds to the repeated combination of muscle contraction, better glucose control, lower insulin demand, oxygen delivery, mitochondrial activation, and time spent in a sustainable aerobic state. So when someone says, "I walk every day, but my belly fat won't move," the first question is not simply, "How many steps did you take?" The better question is, did your walk create a strong enough metabolic signal? And to see why that question matters, let's compare two people walking in completely different ways. Now imagine two people who both believe they are doing exactly what their doctor recommended. They both put on comfortable shoes. They both leave the house at about the same time. They both tell their friends, "I go for a walk every day." From the outside, their routines seem almost identical. But inside their bodies, two completely different metabolic stories begin unfolding. Let's call them Walker A and Walker B. Walker A leaves home carrying a phone. The walk is relaxed and unstructured. Every few minutes there is a reason to slow down. A message arrives. A social media notification appears. There is a quick stop to answer a call. The pace changes constantly, and after about 10 minutes, the walk is over. Walker B follows a different routine. The phone stays in a pocket. The pace is comfortable but purposeful. Breathing becomes deeper without becoming uncomfortable. The walk continues steadily for 30 to 45 minutes, with very few interruptions. During the first 5 minutes, both walkers receive immediate benefits compared to remaining seated. Their joints begin moving, circulation improves, muscles start contracting, and the heart increases its output to supply more oxygen throughout the body. For Walker A, however, the intensity remains very low. Heart rate rises only slightly. The muscles require only a modest amount of additional energy. Blood glucose is used, but the overall demand remains limited. Because the effort is light, the body receives only a small signal that extra fuel is needed. Walker B experiences something different. The continuous pace causes the heart rate to rise into a comfortable aerobic range. Blood vessels widen, allowing oxygen-rich blood to reach the muscles more efficiently. Every step creates repeated muscle contractions that immediately begin increasing glucose uptake. Although fat burning has not yet reached its full potential, the body is preparing for the metabolic changes that will follow. Between 5 and 10 minutes, the differences become much more noticeable. Walker A continues strolling while frequently changing pace. Every pause slightly reduces muscular demand. Every distraction interrupts the rhythm of movement. The body never has enough uninterrupted time to fully settle into a sustained aerobic pattern. Then, just as the muscles are becoming warmer and more metabolically active, the walk ends. The benefits are real, but they remain relatively small. Blood circulation improves for a short period. Joint mobility increases. Some calories are burned. But the overall metabolic signal is limited because the duration and consistency were limited. Walker B, on the other hand, is only getting started. Breathing has become comfortably deeper. The muscles continue contracting rhythmically. GLUT4 transporters become increasingly active, allowing more glucose to move from the bloodstream into muscle cells with less dependence on insulin. Blood sugar begins stabilizing naturally, and insulin demand starts falling. This creates one of the most important hormonal environments for long-term visceral fat reduction. Now imagine the timeline reaching 10 to 20 minutes. Walker A has already returned home. The muscles gradually stop demanding extra energy. Heart rate returns toward resting levels. The beneficial metabolic signals begin fading. The body received some movement, which is certainly healthier than complete inactivity, but the opportunity for deeper adaptation has already ended. Meanwhile, Walker B has entered the stage where aerobic metabolism becomes increasingly efficient. Oxygen delivery is now fully supporting sustained muscle activity. Mitochondria inside muscle cells are producing ATP efficiently, while gradually increasing their use of fatty acids as fuel. The liver notices that muscles are absorbing glucose effectively and no longer needs to release large amounts of additional glucose into the bloodstream. Blood sugar remains remarkably stable. This is the stage where the body begins operating like a coordinated metabolic system, rather than simply responding to the first few minutes of exercise. As the walk continues beyond 20 minutes, Walker B enters an even more valuable phase. Because the pace remains moderate and sustainable, muscles continue demanding energy without becoming exhausted. Fatty acids released from adipose tissue contribute a growing share of fuel production. Insulin remains relatively low, making it easier for fat cells to continue releasing stored energy. The cardiovascular system works efficiently, delivering oxygen that allows mitochondria to maintain aerobic metabolism for an extended period. This is one reason why moderate walking often produces better long-term results than extremely intense exercise for many beginners. The activity can be maintained long enough for these metabolic processes to continue working together, instead of ending prematurely because of fatigue. By the time Walker B reaches 30 to 45 minutes, the body has now spent a prolonged period operating under healthy metabolic conditions. Muscles have removed substantial amounts of glucose from circulation. Blood sugar has remained stable. The liver has coordinated fuel availability without excessive glucose release. Mitochondria have been continuously oxidizing both glucose and fatty acids. Blood vessels have remained dilated, improving circulation throughout the body. The heart has maintained efficient aerobic output without unnecessary strain. When the walk ends, something equally important continues happening. The muscles do not immediately lose their improved insulin sensitivity. For several hours afterward, they remain especially efficient at absorbing glucose. If Walker B eats a balanced meal later, much of that glucose can be directed into muscle glycogen instead of remaining elevated in the bloodstream. The liver also experiences less pressure to manage excess glucose because the muscles are helping perform part of the job. Now imagine both walkers repeating these routines for 3 months. Walker A will almost certainly experience health benefits compared with remaining inactive. Daily movement improves mobility, circulation, and general well-being. But because the metabolic signal remains relatively weak, stubborn visceral fat may change only slowly. Walker B repeatedly teaches the body to become more metabolically flexible. Mitochondria become more numerous through mitochondrial biogenesis. Muscles become increasingly insulin sensitive. Blood sugar control improves. The liver handles glucose more efficiently. Visceral fat gradually becomes easier to access as an energy source. Waist circumference slowly decreases. Endurance improves, and the body becomes better at burning fat not only during walks, but throughout everyday life. The remarkable part is that neither walker exercised to exhaustion. The difference was not determination or pain. The difference was that one walk consistently sent a strong metabolic signal, while the other sent only a weak one, and that signal reaches far beyond the muscles. Every major organ receives it, responds to it, and gradually adapts in ways that determine whether stubborn belly fat remains trapped or slowly begins disappearing. The reason the right walking routine works so well is that it does not change only one part of the body. It creates a coordinated response across nearly every major organ involved in metabolism. Each organ has its own job, but they all communicate continuously. When your walk is purposeful, long enough, and repeated consistently, this communication becomes stronger and more efficient. When your walk is too casual, too short, or too inconsistent, the signal remains weak, and the body has little reason to change its long-term metabolic behavior. Let's begin with your muscles, because they are the first organs to demand more energy. Every step requires thousands of muscle fibers to contract. These contractions immediately increase the need for ATP, which means the muscles must constantly pull fuel from the bloodstream. During a purposeful walk, these repeated contractions activate GLUT4 transporters, allowing glucose to enter muscle cells without relying as heavily on insulin. As the walk continues, mitochondria inside the muscles become increasingly active, converting both glucose and fatty acids into usable energy. Over time, repeated moderate walking teaches muscles to become larger metabolic engines, capable of using fuel more efficiently than before. Now look at the liver. The liver constantly watches what the muscles are doing. As muscles remove glucose from the bloodstream, the liver adjusts its own glucose production accordingly. Instead of releasing excessive amounts of glucose, it carefully balances glycogen storage and glycogen breakdown. This reduces unnecessary blood sugar fluctuations and creates a healthier environment inside liver cells. When walking becomes a regular habit, the liver experiences less pressure from chronically elevated insulin and excess circulating glucose. This helps reduce the likelihood of storing additional fat inside the liver while improving overall metabolic flexibility. The pancreas benefits almost immediately. Normally, every meal requires the pancreas to release insulin so glucose can enter cells. But during and after moderate walking, muscles absorb glucose much more efficiently. Because muscles require less insulin to take in glucose, the pancreas can reduce insulin production. This may not sound dramatic, but over months and years, it reduces stress on the insulin-producing beta cells. Healthier insulin regulation also means the body spends less time in a storage-focused state, and more time allowing stored fat to be used as fuel. Now let's examine visceral fat itself. Many people imagine fat cells as lifeless storage bags, but visceral fat is remarkably active. It constantly releases hormones, inflammatory molecules, and fatty acids into the bloodstream. When insulin remains high, visceral fat tends to hold on to its stored energy. During a sustained moderate walk, however, insulin gradually decreases while muscle energy demand remains high. Under these conditions, fat cells become more willing to release fatty acids into circulation. Those fatty acids are then transported to working muscles, where mitochondria burn them to produce ATP. This process does not happen dramatically after a single walk, but repeated hundreds of times throughout the year. It gradually reduces the amount of visceral fat surrounding the internal organs. Your heart also undergoes meaningful changes. During a purposeful walk, the heart pumps more blood with each beat. This improved stroke volume delivers oxygen and nutrients to muscles, while also supplying internal organs with the circulation they need to function efficiently. Over time, the heart itself becomes stronger. Resting heart rate often decreases because each heartbeat becomes more effective. Better cardiovascular efficiency supports every other metabolic adaptation occurring throughout the body. Blood vessels quietly contribute as well. Increased blood flow stimulates the release of nitric oxide from the inner lining of healthy arteries. Nitric oxide relaxes blood vessels, allowing them to widen and improve circulation. Better circulation means oxygen reaches muscles more efficiently, nutrients are delivered more effectively, and waste products are removed more quickly. Healthier blood vessels also support lower blood pressure and reduce strain on the cardiovascular system. The brain may seem unrelated to belly fat, but it plays a surprisingly important role. Purposeful walking improves blood flow to the brain, while helping regulate stress hormones. Many people finish a moderate walk feeling calmer, more focused, and mentally refreshed. Lower chronic stress means lower long-term cortisol exposure. Since chronically elevated cortisol can contribute to increased appetite, higher blood sugar, and greater abdominal fat storage, improving stress regulation indirectly supports healthier body composition. There is another invisible hero in this story, the mitochondria. These microscopic structures exist in enormous numbers inside both muscles and many internal organs. They are responsible for converting nutrients into ATP. Every purposeful walk encourages mitochondria to become more efficient, and over time, the body even creates additional mitochondria through a process called mitochondrial biogenesis. More mitochondria mean a greater ability to burn fat, better endurance, improved energy production, and healthier aging. Casual, inconsistent walking provides only a weak stimulus for this adaptation, while repeated moderate walking sends a much stronger message that more energy-producing capacity is needed. Stress hormones also deserve attention. Some people assume that the harder the workout, the better the results. But excessively intense exercise performed too often can raise stress hormones beyond what is necessary, especially for beginners. Purposeful moderate walking creates a healthier balance. It challenges the body enough to stimulate adaptation while remaining sustainable and enjoyable. This balance allows people to repeat the habit week after week, without excessive fatigue or burnout. When you put all these pieces together, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The right walk is not simply burning calories. It is sending a coordinated message to every major metabolic organ. Muscles increase glucose uptake. The liver balances energy more efficiently. The pancreas reduces insulin demand. Visceral fat gradually releases stored fuel. The heart strengthens. Blood vessels improve circulation. The brain regulates stress more effectively. Mitochondria multiply and become better at producing energy. The wrong walk still provides benefits, but the signal is much weaker. And because the signal is weak, the long-term changes that help reduce stubborn belly fat happen much more slowly. So what does this mean in everyday life? How do these invisible biological improvements translate into a smaller waist, better energy, and healthier metabolism? And what common mistakes continue preventing so many people from seeing those results? That's exactly what we'll explore next. Once you understand how your organs respond to the right kind of walking, the real-life benefits begin to make much more sense. Many people expect the first sign of progress to be a smaller waistline, but that is often not what happens first. In reality, your metabolism usually improves before your appearance changes. After several weeks of purposeful walking, many people notice that they no longer feel exhausted every afternoon. Their energy becomes more stable because blood sugar rises and falls less dramatically throughout the day. Instead of craving sweets between meals, they feel satisfied for longer periods. These changes happen because muscles have become more efficient at absorbing glucose. Insulin sensitivity has improved, and the body is relying less on constant sugar intake to maintain energy. Sleep often improves as well. Moderate walking helps regulate the body's internal clock, reduces chronic stress, and supports healthier hormone balance. Better sleep then reinforces the same metabolic improvements by lowering unnecessary cortisol levels and improving glucose regulation the following day. It becomes a positive cycle in which walking supports sleep, sleep supports metabolism, and metabolism makes future walks feel easier. As months pass, additional changes usually become noticeable. Waist circumference gradually decreases. Clothes fit more comfortably. Walking uphill feels easier. Resting heart rate often declines because the cardiovascular system has become more efficient. Blood pressure may improve. Many people also experience healthier fasting blood sugar, lower triglycerides, and a reduced risk of fatty liver as the body becomes more metabolically flexible. Unfortunately, many people unknowingly sabotage these benefits by repeating a few common mistakes. The first mistake is focusing only on step count while ignoring walking quality. Reaching 10,000 steps sounds impressive, but if those steps are spread throughout the day in tiny bursts with little sustained effort, the metabolic signal may remain relatively weak. The second mistake is stopping after only 5 or 10 minutes. Short walks are certainly beneficial, especially after meals, but expecting dramatic visceral fat reduction from very brief sessions often leads to disappointment. The body needs enough time to settle into sustained aerobic metabolism. Another common mistake is constantly interrupting the walk. Frequent stops, endless phone scrolling, shopping breaks, or standing still for several minutes reduce the continuous muscular demand that helps drive many of the metabolic adaptations we've discussed. Some people walk only once or twice each week and wonder why nothing changes. Others work extremely hard for a few days, become exhausted, then quit altogether. Consistency almost always beats occasional intensity. Nutrition mistakes can also slow progress. Finishing a healthy walk and immediately consuming large amounts of sugary snacks or calorie-dense processed foods may replace much of the energy that was just used while keeping insulin elevated. Poor sleep, chronic stress, dehydration, and avoiding resistance training can further reduce the long-term effectiveness of a walking program. Perhaps the biggest psychological mistake is expecting belly fat to disappear within a week or two. Visceral fat accumulated over years rarely disappears overnight. The body changes through repeated biological signals, not through one perfect workout. Every purposeful walk is another vote for a healthier metabolism, and those votes gradually add up. Instead of asking yourself, "Did I walk today?" try asking a more meaningful question. Did my walk create a strong enough metabolic signal to help my body adapt? That single change in thinking often transforms walking from a casual habit into one of the most effective long-term tools for improving metabolic health. Now let's bring everything together into a simple, practical plan you can begin using immediately. So what does the right walking routine actually look like? Fortunately, it is much simpler than many people expect. Aim for a purposeful walk lasting about 30 to 45 minutes, 4 to 6 days each week. Choose a pace that raises your heart rate and makes your breathing deeper, but still allows you to speak in short sentences. If you can easily sing while walking, the pace is probably too easy. If you are gasping for air after only a few minutes, the pace is probably too hard. Your goal is a sustainable aerobic rhythm that your body can maintain comfortably. If you don't have 45 minutes available, don't give up. Even a 10 to 20-minute walk after meals can help reduce blood sugar spikes and improve insulin sensitivity. Build consistency first, then gradually increase duration as your fitness improves. Support your walking routine with protein-rich meals, plenty of fiber, good hydration, quality sleep, and resistance training 2 or 3 times each week. These habits work together to strengthen your metabolism far more effectively than any single strategy alone. The biggest walking mistake is not poor technique or wearing the wrong shoes. It is walking too casually, too briefly, and too inconsistently to create the metabolic conditions your body needs to reduce stubborn belly fat. Belly fat responds to repeated biological signals: stronger muscle contractions, better glucose control, lower insulin, efficient oxygen delivery, healthier mitochondria, and consistent movement over time. If you found this video helpful, leave a comment below and tell us honestly, are you usually a casual stroller or a purposeful walker? We'd love to hear about your experience. And if you enjoy science-based videos about walking, intermittent fasting, visceral fat, blood sugar, metabolism, and healthy aging, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss our next episode.